On K2, 1 out of every 4 climbers doesn't come back. But the weirdest death happened where nobody should be dying at all, right in base camp. A seasoned alpinist. Dozens of climbs under his belt. And then, one mistake, just a minute long. How did the mountain get him before he had even taken a step toward the summit? 8,611 meters above sea level, the second tallest peak on Earth. But when it comes to those who never return, K2 is number 1. 4 climbers reach the summit for everyone who dies. On Everest, that number is 1 in 20. On K2, it's 1 in 4. These aren't just numbers. This is a sentence written by nature itself. Locals call it Chogori, the Great Mountain. Climbers around the world, they know it by another name, the Savage Mountain, the Man-Eater. There are no easy routes here. Every meter is a sheer wall of ice and rock. Every single step pushes you right to the edge. Winds howl at up to 200 kilometers per hour, literally sweeping people off their feet. Temperatures plunge to -60. At altitudes like this, your body just shuts down, slowly but surely. There's only a third of the oxygen your body needs to live. And in winter, K2 becomes something more than just a mountain. It turns into an executioner with no face. Until 2021, no human had ever summited K2 in winter and come back alive. Dozens of expeditions tried, they all failed. The cold wrecked their gear. Storms trapped climbers on the slopes for weeks. Avalanches wiped out entire teams in seconds. In winter, the regular rules of mountaineering break down on K2. Normal acclimatization schedules just don't apply. Your carefully packed food and fuel almost don't matter. A storm can rage for 2 weeks straight, and you'll run out before the sky clears. And the worst part? There's no way out. Helicopters can't fly above 7,000 meters. The air is too thin. The rotors can't lift the machine. And even if a pilot is crazy enough to try, the wind will just slam the chopper into the cliffs. No one comes to rescue you on K2 in winter. If something goes wrong, you're alone. Completely alone. Base camp sits at 5,000 meters. For most people, that's already where altitude sickness kicks in. But for climbers on K2, this is home. The only place where you can rest, warm up, recover after a brutal climb. This is supposed to be the safe zone. That's what everyone believed. Winter 2011 to 2012. Karakoram, Pakistan. A new team arrives on K2, and they're determined not to repeat the mistakes of those who came before. These aren't daredevils or thrill seekers. They're pros of the highest level. Only the very best even think about taking on this mountain in winter. 11 people, all international class athletes. Every single one of them has summited Elbrus, Pamir, and the Himalayas. Each has racked up dozens of ascents where a single wrong step means falling into an abyss. This isn't a group of backpackers. This is an elite Russian assault team, the top of the top, the ones who go where nobody else even looks. The expedition is led by Viktor Kozlov, a man for whom discipline isn't just a word, it's a survival ritual. On K2, in winter, there's no room for improvisation, no margin for exhaustion, no margin for weakness. Kozlov runs his team like a military mission. Everyone has a clear role. No solo heroes here. Each person is responsible for their section and for the life of the person next to them. Radio check-ins every 2 hours. They head out on schedule and nobody comes back later than dark. No exceptions, no improvisation. On K2, breaking the plan is a recipe for disaster. There's a doctor on the team, Vladimir Bashkarov. He's a seasoned high-altitude pro who's already climbed mountains over 8,000 meters. His job is to monitor every single team member. Pulmonary edema, cerebral edema, frostbite. These can hit fast at altitude, sometimes in just a few hours. Bashkirov knows his presence at base camp isn't just for peace of mind. It's critical. One climber is Vitaly Gorelik. He's 42, an engineer from Novosibirsk. For him, climbing isn't a job. It's a passion, something he's trained for over years. Gorelik isn't a beginner. He's tackled 7,000-meter peaks in the Pamirs and tough routes in the Caucasus. He's the quiet type, the one who just gets things done. Steady, thorough, reliable. His teammates know, if Gorelik sets a rope, it's rock solid. If he says he'll make it up, he will. He doesn't make a fuss, never brings drama. It's all about doing what he says, no more, no less. But on K2, in winter, drama finds everyone, even the calmest, even the most dependable. Gorelik's main job, setting up the intermediate camps and fixing the ropes that the whole team will use to climb to the top. This is a gig where you cannot afford mistakes. One rope set wrong, and everyone who comes after could fall. Gorelik gets that. Kozlov gets that. Everyone on the team gets that. Gorelik is the one who will learn, firsthand, just how high the stakes are for this kind of discipline. It's the end of December 2011. The team finishes acclimatizing and gets ready for their first big push up the slope. The mission? Set up Camp 3 at an altitude of 7,000 meters. To do that, they'll need to fix hundreds of meters of rope over icy faces, anchor tents, and prepare the route for the final summit push. It's 6 in the morning, minus 40 degrees. The wind rips snow off the slopes, turning it into a white cloud that lashes your face like a sandblaster. Gorelik heads out from base camp with the team. Ahead lies 8 hours of climbing. Every step is a fight, against gravity, against the cold, against your own body screaming at you to turn back. But they keep going up. The route on K2 in winter isn't really a trail. It's a vertical maze made of ice and rock. There are spots where the slope hits 70 degrees, icy cornices that could collapse with a single wrong swing of an ice axe, snow bridges over crevasses that could cave in under your weight. You don't just walk here, you have to build your way. The climbers drive ice screws, these steel anchors, deep into the frozen wall. Every screw needs to go at least 20 centimeters in, which means hammering away in brutal cold when your fingers are going numb and the ice is so hard it sparks against metal. They stretch ropes from anchor to anchor, point to point. This handrail is the only thing keeping you from falling into a drop that goes down for miles. There's a single carabiner clipped onto the rope. If you slip, you'll just dangle there. But if that rope snaps, you fall. Gorelik goes about his work like clockwork. He checks every knot, tugs every rope. He knows that in a few days, the whole team will be coming up this way. If he messes up, if he gets even one thing wrong, someone may not make it back. Out here, one mistake is pretty much a death sentence. Hours go by, one, then another, then a third. The group climbs above Camp 2, heading for the 7,000-meter mark. This is where the so-called death zone begins. It's the altitude where the human body just can't recover anymore. Every minute you spend here literally chips away at your life. Your lungs are working full tilt, but it's never enough. Your heart thunders away at 120 beats a minute, even at rest. The brain starts to shut down non-essential systems. Your coordination goes wonky. Your reactions slow down. And then nature pounces. Suddenly, a blast of snow. It's not an avalanche. This is something else. It's a huge cloud of snow whipped up by the wind, ripped right off the upper slopes. It drops on you like a storm. Visibility, gone. Breathing, forget it. Snow swirls into your nose, your mouth, crawls under your goggles. The climbers just press themselves against the slope and wait it out. Because if you move in this, you're lost. You might step right into the void. Gorelik grips his ice axe. His partner's beside him. Nobody says a word. It's pointless anyway. The wind would just swallow it. For 10 minutes, the world is just snow and howling air. Then, just as suddenly, it's over. The group gets moving again. They set up Camp 3, 2 tents pitched on a tiny patch carved out of the snow. This is where they'll rest before making one final push for the top. The job's done. Now they can head back down. But every climber knows, going down is always riskier than climbing up. On the way up, you're fresh and focused. On the way down, you're wrecked, dehydrated. Your brain's running at half speed. But Gorelik can't just leave. One last job remains. He notices a safety rope hanging a little too loose, dangling over a massive drop. That's bad news. When the next team comes through, it could slip, pull out an ice screw, turn into a dangerous swing. This needs fixing, right now. The others start their descent while Gorelik stays behind. He heads for the trouble spot, takes off his pack, grabs his carabiners and slings, and gets to work. The weather here changes in a flash. In minutes, the sky turns into a gray sheet. The wind picks up. Soft at first, then it slams into you. The temperature drops another 10 degrees. That's 50 below zero. At this altitude, that's more than just cold. It's actually hostile. It attacks any exposed skin. Gorelik feels the cold creeping in, right through his gloves. They're thick, made for this extreme stuff. But up here, even those have limits. He tries to speed up, but speed just isn't an option right now. Every movement costs. You have to fight for each one. His brain feels like it's running in slow motion. His fingers won't move the way he wants. The rope's all tangled up in the carabiner, and he needs to free it. There's only one way to do that. He's got to take off his glove. Gorelik knows the rule. Never, ever take off your gloves on a mountain in the winter. Never. Not even for a second. But the rope just won't budge. So he does what dozens of climbers before him have done in the same spot. He thinks, just 1 minute, 60 seconds, and that's it. He pulls off his right glove. Instantly, cold stabs into his skin like 1,000 tiny needles. His fingers start to go numb right away, but he manages to work, untangling the rope, fixing the carabiner, checking the tension. Done. He tries to shove the glove back on, but now his fingers won't bend. They barely feel like they belong to him, stiff and awkward, almost like wood. He forces his hand into the glove and starts down. An hour goes by. Gorelik climbs down, making his way along the ropes he'd just secured. His hand hurts, at first just a dull, throbbing ache. Then the pain sharpens, starts to pulse. That's not a good sign. When your tissues start to freeze, first you lose feeling. Then the pain ramps up, a signal your cells are breaking down. Ice crystals inside the flesh tear cell walls from the inside out. Blood vessels clamp shut, starving the tissue of oxygen. Cells begin to die. First-degree frostbite, your fingers just turn red and tingly. It passes on its own. Second degree, you get blisters. It hurts, but you can recover. Third degree, that's tissue death. There's no coming back from that. That's when they start talking amputation. He finally stumbles into Camp 2, takes his glove off. His fingers are dark blue and swollen, the skin covered in bubbles. Touching them sends a bolt of agony through him. One of his teammates takes one look, then shakes his head. Down, now, he says. Gorelik just nods. He knows what that means. His climb is over. Not at the summit, not even in the final push. Here, just working with the rope. From this moment, time's running against him. The descent from 7,000 meters to base camp means dropping 5,000 meters of altitude. Normally, that'd take around 6 to 8 hours. For Gorelik, it's more like torture. Every step sends a fresh jolt of pain through his hand. His fingers are so swollen, the glove cuts into the skin. He tries to keep his hand raised, hoping to ease the swelling, but it barely helps. His teammates walk beside him in silence. They know it's finished for Gorelik. All the prep, all the training, those months of waiting, it all ended in a single minute without a glove. But nobody says it out loud. On the mountain, nobody wastes time on pity. You just keep moving. So, Gorelik keeps moving. 1 hour passes, then 2, then 3. The pain never fades for a second. It's just there in the background, mixing with his breath, every step, everything he does to stay focused on the path. He grits his teeth and keeps going. At last, base camp tents come into view. 5,000 meters. The air's a little thicker here. It's easier to breathe. But for his frostbitten hand, none of that matters. The damage is already done. He finally reaches the medical tent. Vladimir Bashkirov, the expedition doctor, is already waiting. Somebody had called him on the radio. Bashkirov checks the hand, gently peeling away the glove where the fabric stuck to the skin. Gorelik clenches his teeth, but doesn't make a sound. What you see is hard to look at. His fingers are swollen to twice their normal size. The skin's this dark purple, almost black, scattered with blue patches. There are blisters, some of them the size of coins. A few have already burst, leaking clear fluid. Bashkirov stays quiet for a few seconds, then finally speaks, barely above a whisper. Third degree, maybe fourth in some spots. Fourth degree frostbite means not just the skin and soft tissue, but even the bone gets damaged. No way to fix that. It always means amputation. Gorelik just nods. He's a climber. He knows exactly what that means. Bashkirov gets to work, carefully wrapping the hand in sterile bandages. He gives painkillers, then antibiotics to fight off infection. But both of them know this is just buying time. Real treatment, only possible in a hospital. And the nearest hospital is all the way in Skardu, about 150 kilometers from base camp. And evacuation's needed, urgently. Kozlov, the expedition leader, gets on the satellite phone to reach the coordinators in Pakistan, explains what's happening, and asks for a helicopter. The reply comes fast. The helicopter will come, but not today. The weather's getting worse. Visibility's dropping. Flying in those conditions, way too risky. So the flight's postponed for tomorrow, maybe even the day after. Gorelik stays put at base camp. Bashkirov keeps changing the dressings every few hours, checking Gorelik's temperature, watching for any signs of gangrene. So far, everything's under control. The pain is bad, but manageable. The hand's treated. There's no infection yet. The rest of the team keeps prepping for the climb. The plan's still the same. Set up the high camps, wait for a clear weather window, and go for the summit. Gorelik watches as his friends get their gear together. He wanted to be up there with them. Now, he'll wait at the bottom. But the real fight isn't even happening yet. Night falls at base camp. Gorelik's lying in his tent, wrapped up tight in his sleeping bag. His hand throbs with pain, but he tries to sleep. The helicopter's supposed to come tomorrow. By this time tomorrow, it should all be over. But his body has other plans. By morning, Gorelik feels a heavy tightness in his chest. Breathing gets hard, like his lungs are filling up with water. He tries to inhale, but can't get enough air. Tries again, same result. Bashkirov comes over and knows instantly, something's wrong. Gorelik's sitting up against his backpack, breathing fast and shallow. His lips have a bluish tint. That's a classic sign. He's not getting enough oxygen. Bashkirov pulls out his stethoscope and listens to Gorelik's chest. What he hears makes him frown, wheezing, wet, bubbling sounds in both lungs. Pulmonary edema. High-altitude pulmonary edema is one of the most dangerous things that can happen in the mountains. The mechanism is terrifyingly simple. Up here, the blood vessels in your lungs get squeezed by the low air pressure. Fluid starts to leak from the tiny blood vessels into the alveoli, those little air sacs where oxygen gets into your blood. The lungs fill up with fluid. You start drowning from the inside out. Gorelik is drowning in his own lungs. Usually high-altitude edema shows up when someone climbs too fast without acclimatizing. But for Gorelik, it's a different story this time. Frostbite kicked off an intense inflammatory reaction. The body threw everything it had into fighting tissue damage. The immune system went into full-on emergency mode. And up there, at 5,000 meters, where every single cell is already maxed out, this was a major trigger. The blood vessels in the lungs just couldn't take it anymore. Fluid started to seep in. Bashkirov acts fast. He gives Gorelik dexamethasone, a heavy-duty anti-inflammatory drug. Hooks him up to an oxygen tank, just trying to boost the oxygen levels in his blood. But the treatment for high-altitude pulmonary edema is simple and strict. Get down. ASAP. The lower you go, the better your chances. Every 300 meters lower means another shot at survival. But Gorelik is already as low as he can get. Base camp on K2 sits at 5,000 meters. Below that is just the valley, and to get there, you'd have to hike for 2 or 3 days across a glacier. In his condition, that's off the table. Helicopter evacuation is the only way out, and it needs to happen, right now. Kozlov gets on the radio again. He spells out exactly what's going on, that this isn't a routine evacuation anymore. This is life or death, but the answer comes back the same. The weather just won't allow it. Visibility is 0. The wind is howling. No helicopter can fly in this. So, Gorelik stays in the tent, breathing through an oxygen mask. Every breath feels like a struggle. Every exhale comes with a harsh, rattling sound. Bashkirov sits by his side, tracking his pulse, his blood pressure, his oxygen saturation. The numbers are bad, and they're dropping by the hour. By evening, Gorelik's breathing changes. It turns wet and bubbling, like he's struggling for air through water. You can hear the sound, this thick, moist crackle, from meters away. It's what doctors call a death rattle. Technically, they're wet rails. What your lungs sound like when your air sacs are so full of fluid, air bubbles through with every breath. Bashkirov knows exactly what this means. This is the last stage. If the swelling keeps getting worse, Gorelik will drown. He'll literally suffocate, right there on dry land. The doctor ups the dose of dexamethasone, throws in diuretics, meds that are supposed to draw fluid out through the kidneys. In a hospital, this might have helped, but up here, at 5,000 meters, in a freezing tent, it barely makes a difference. Gorelik lies still, oxygen mask strapped to his face, eyes closed. He's not asleep, he just doesn't have the strength to open his eyes. Every cell in his body is fighting to stay alive. His heart is racing, 140 beats per minute. Blood pressure's dropping. The oxygen in his blood is down to 70%. Normal is 95 and above. At 70, the brain just starts to shut down. Bashkirov understands. Medicine can't help anymore. There's no ventilator. No way to pull fluid out of Gorelik's lungs. All they have are basic drugs and that one oxygen tank, which is almost empty. He steps outside to Kozlov. If the helicopter doesn't come tomorrow morning, we're going to lose him. Kozlov is silent. He knows Bashkirov isn't being dramatic. He's seen enough deaths in the mountains to understand exactly what's at stake. Gorelik is hanging by a thread. The night drags on in anxious waiting. No one in the team gets any sleep. Someone's sitting by the radio, listening to the latest weather update. Someone else is just staring into the campfire, watching the flames dance. Inside Gorelik's tent, it's silent, except for the rough rattling sound of his breathing and the low hum of the oxygen concentrator. By morning, those rattles are quieter, but that doesn't mean he's getting better. It just means he's too weak to breathe deeply anymore. Each breath is quick, shallow, and ragged. Bashkirov checks his pulse. It's barely there, thin and fluttery. His blood pressure is bottoming out. Oxygen saturation, 60%. When it drops that low, people lose consciousness. The brain starts shutting down everything non-essential. Only the basic reflexes keep going. A bit of breath here, a faint heartbeat there. Right now, Gorelik's walking a fine line between life and death. But he's still with us. Bashkirov swaps out another oxygen tank. He gives Gorelik another dose of meds, then checks the bandage on his frostbitten hand. It doesn't really matter anymore, not with the way Gorelik's lungs are swelling up, but habit is habit. Bashkirov sits down beside him and puts a hand on his shoulder. He doesn't say anything, just sits there, because sometimes that's all a doctor can do. Dawn comes slowly. A pale gray light seeps through the clouds, but there's no sunrise, no sun. The sky is this solid, heavy blanket, a sign a serious storm is on the way. Kozlov steps out of his tent and looks up. The wind's picking up. Clouds race across the sky, dragging themselves over the ridges of K2. That's a bad sign. He grabs the satellite phone and calls the coordination center in Skardu. "How's the weather? Is the helicopter coming?" There's a pause, then, "Negative. Visibility is less than 100 meters. Winds are hitting 30 meters a second. Flights are grounded." Kozlov grips the phone. He wants to yell, to bargain, to push for something, anything, but he knows it's pointless. The pilots aren't sitting this out because they're scared. They're not flying because it would be suicide. Up at 5,000 meters, a helicopter is already working at the edge of what's technically possible. The air is thin. There's barely any lift. The controls get twitchy. Add to that the zero visibility and hurricane winds, and you're looking at a guaranteed disaster. But without that chopper, Gorelik's got no shot. Kozlov heads back to the medical tent. Bashkirov is sitting with Gorelik, jotting down his stats in a notebook. Pulse, blood pressure, breath rate. It's the kind of thing doctors do, even when they know it's not going to change a thing. "How is he?" Kozlov asks. Bashkirov doesn't look up. "Not good. His oxygen's dropped to 50%. Breathing's shallow, pulse is weak. He's drifting in and out. 50% blood oxygen is the absolute red zone. At that point, the organs start checking out. Brain, heart, kidneys, everything running on emergency shutdown. Gorelik just lies there, completely still. His skin is pale, almost bluish. His lips are dark purple, eyes shut. You can barely tell he's breathing, just this soft rise and fall of his chest, the faint rasp of air. Gorelik is dying. Slowly, but there's no stopping it. The team gathers outside the med tent. Nobody says it out loud, but everyone's thinking the same thing. What now? Carry him down on foot? That's not going to happen. He can't walk. Carry him out on a stretcher? Across a glacier, over crevasses, in the middle of a storm? That would take days, and he doesn't even have hours, let alone days. Wait for a helicopter? But when would that even show up? Tomorrow? The day after? Maybe in a week? One of the climbers quietly says, "There's nothing more we can do." Kozlov looks at him, then at Bashkirov, then at the tent where Gorelik is lying. He's the leader. He's responsible for everyone in this expedition. And right now, he gets it. None of his decisions actually matter anymore. Nature has already made the call for him. At that moment, the whole team realizes something. They need a miracle. The wind picks up. The tents start to shake in the gusts. Snow ripped from the slopes is flying sideways, lashing the fabric, forcing its way into every gap. The storm slams into base camp. A storm on K2 isn't just bad weather, it's a siege. Nature locks you in your tent and you're not getting out until it decides to let you go. The wind howls up to 80 kilometers an hour. The gusts hit the tents like a giant's fist. The fabric bows inward, stretching to the breaking point. You can actually hear it threatening to rip apart. Climbers grab the tent poles from inside, hanging on, bracing the frames with their arms. Visibility drops to nothing. The whole camp is surrounded by a whiteout. You can't even see the next tent over, even though it's just 5 meters away. Step outside, and you're lost. Take a step in the wrong direction, and you disappear into the snow. Even if your friends are standing 2 meters away, they won't be able to find you. The storm has sealed you in. Completely. In the medical tent, Bashkirov is still fighting for Gorelik's life. He gives him injections on the dot, checks his oxygen mask, swaps out the canister as soon as the pressure drops. He's trying to do everything by the book, just like in the hospital, just like they taught him in med school. But this isn't a hospital. This is a tent, shaking, battered by the storm. It's barely above freezing. Your fingers go numb when you take off your gloves to get a shot ready. There's no machines, no labs, no way to do proper tests or adjust treatment. It's just a doctor, a dying patient, and the storm raging outside. Bashkirov gives another dose of dexamethasone. That's the 5th shot today. He knows raising the dose any further is dangerous. The side effects are real: suppressed immune system, high blood pressure, risk of a stomach bleed. But what do you pick? The risk of side effects or certain death from pulmonary edema? He goes with the risk. Gorelik doesn't react. He just lies there, completely still. His breathing is getting more and more shallow. The wheezing quiets down, not because the fluid is gone, but because he just can't breathe deeply anymore. Bashkirov checks his pulse. Barely there. A heart rate about 160 beats per minute. The heart's going all out, pushing blood through lungs filled with fluid. The doctor knows the body is losing this fight. He steps out of the tent, fighting wind that's almost knocking him off his feet, and walks over to Kozlov. He's straight with him. He's got, at best, a day, maybe less. Kozlov gives him a long look. Is there anything else we can do? Nothing, only evacuation, only a hospital, only a helicopter. Kozlov picks up the satellite phone again. He checks in again. It's the 3rd time today he's explaining the situation, but the answer never changes. It's a storm. No flights, just wait. That's all they can do. Bashkirov heads back to the medical tent, sits down next to Gorelik, and just looks at him. Pale face, blue lips, his chest rising and falling with real effort. Bashkirov is a doctor. Saving lives is what he does. But up here on K2, in the middle of a storm, even he's powerless. Still, they don't give up. By evening, the storm eases up just a bit. The wind slows to around 50 kilometers an hour. Visibility gets better. You can actually see parts of K2 through the breaks in the clouds. Kozlov gets on the radio right away. There's a break in the weather. Can a helicopter make the flight? The coordinator in Skardu answers carefully. We're checking. Give us an hour. That hour stretches on forever. The whole team crowds around the radio. Nobody says a word. Just listening to the static, waiting. Finally, a voice cuts through. Pilot's willing to try. We'll take off in 20 minutes. It's the first glimmer of hope in 3 days. Bashkirov rushes to get Gorelik ready for transport. He secures the IV, checks the oxygen tank. The pressure needs to last the whole flight. He bundles Gorelik into a sleeping bag and a thermal blanket. Outside, the climbers are clearing a landing zone, hauling away rocks, packing down snow, setting up markers so the pilot can see where to land. Everything's ready. Now it's just a matter of waiting for the helicopter. 20 minutes go by, then 30, then 40, still nothing. Kozlov grabs the radio again. Where's the helicopter? They took off, but the weather got worse as they approached the mountains. Visibility plummeted. They're turning back. The helicopter was ready to go, but nature said no. The pilot tried. He cleared Skardu and aimed straight for the Karakoram, but about 15 minutes in, he hit a solid wall of clouds. Thick, gray, impossible to see through. Flying a helicopter into a wall like that, it's basically like driving down the highway with your eyes closed. You have no idea where you're headed, no idea what's in front of you, and out there, what's in front of you is an 8,000-meter mountain. Make one wrong move and you crash into a slope. The crew is gone. Gorelik still doesn't get saved, so the pilot makes the call. We're heading back. That's not cowardice. That's being a pro. He knows what's possible, and he knows a dead pilot isn't helping anyone. Kozlov puts down the radio, looks at the team, faces filled with disappointment and helplessness. He knows they have to do something more. He reaches out to the Russian embassy in Islamabad, explains what's happening, begs for help, asks them to push the Pakistani authorities, to do anything that might speed up evacuation. The embassy promises to do what they can. They call the foreign ministry. The foreign ministry calls the Army Air Corps. The Army reaches out to the local rescue teams. The whole bureaucratic machine whirs to life. Calls, emails, permissions, clearances. But all of that takes time, and Gorelik doesn't have time. Bashkirov does another check. Things are getting worse. Oxygen saturation is down to 40%. His pulse, weak, uneven. Breathing is ragged. The doctor jots everything down in his notebook. His hand is shaking. Not because he's cold, but because he feels completely powerless. He's a doctor. He's supposed to save lives. But here, in this place, there's nothing he can do. Night falls again. The storm comes back. The wind picks up. You can barely see a thing. The helicopter isn't coming today. And honestly, it might not come tomorrow either. The team stays put in camp, surrounded by mountains, relentless weather, and that overwhelming sense of helplessness. Day 3, Day 4, Day 5. The storm won't leave. Sometimes for a few hours it eases up, just enough to give everyone some hope. Then it comes back, even stronger, almost like it's mocking them. Everybody's stuck at base camp. Every morning, it's the same old ritual. Kozlov radios in and asks about the chopper. The answer never changes. The weather won't allow it. Every single day is a repeat of the last. The same whiteout outside their tents. The same howling wind. The same feeling that nothing is ever going to change. Time moves differently on K2. There's no work to do, no TV, no internet. There's just a tent, the cold, and the wait. Hours feel endless. Days blur together into one long stretch of misery and frustration. The climbers try to keep busy. They fix their gear, read whatever books they packed, maybe play a hand of cards. But really, these are just distractions, because everyone is thinking about the same thing. Gorelik, lying in the next tent, slowly slipping away. Out here, time is a bigger enemy than the illness itself. Bashkirov spends each day by the patient's side. He changes IVs, gives medication, checks the numbers. He's doing everything a doctor can do up here, but nothing is working. Gorelik is right on the edge. His body is running on fumes. His heart keeps going, weak and uneven, but still beating. His lungs struggle with each breath, shallow, raspy, but still hanging on. He doesn't wake up. He doesn't open his eyes. He doesn't react to voices. He's just there, in limbo between life and death. Bashkirov knows. This isn't living. This is agony, stretched out day after day. The body hasn't given up yet, but it's already lost. It's only a matter of time. Every morning, the doctor checks his pulse, surprised to find the heart still beating. Every evening, he quietly wonders if tonight will be the end. But Gorelik just keeps holding on. The team starts to lose hope. No one says it out loud, but everyone feels it. Conversations get shorter. Their faces are heavy. Someone sits at the edge of the tent, staring out at nothing. One of the climbers quietly says to Kozlov, "Maybe we should start preparing for the worst." Kozlov doesn't answer. He's been preparing in his head for a while. He's thinking about what he'll say to the family, how he'll explain that they did everything humanly possible, how he'll keep living with this weight. The embassy keeps pressing the Pakistani authorities. The army helicopter crew promises to take off the very first chance they get. Local rescuers are on standby. But the weather isn't budging. K2 is still holding its victim, not letting go. Gorelik is in the medical tent, motionless, pale, barely breathing. Bashkirov sits beside him. He's not writing down numbers anymore. He's just there, waiting, because that's all that's left. It's now the 6th day. Gorelik's condition is critical. You can barely feel a pulse. His breathing is shallow and broken. Oxygen saturation is swinging between 30 and 40%. With numbers like that, a person shouldn't be alive, but Gorelik's still hanging on. Bashkirov doesn't get it. He's seen plenty of cases of high-altitude pulmonary edema. Normally, without treatment, people make it maybe 2 or 3 days. Gorelik is on day 6. This isn't just willpower. It's something different. His body just refuses to quit, even though everything is on the edge of shutting down. But everyone knows it can't go on like this for long. Kozlov calls the team together. He doesn't dance around it. We have to make a decision. We can't just sit here and wait. One of the climbers throws out an idea. What if we try to carry him down on a stretcher? At least to the nearest village. It'd be easier to get a helicopter from there. Bashkirov shakes his head. He won't make it. Any movement, any at all, is a strain on his heart, on his lungs. He's right on the edge. All that shaking around, the altitude changes, the cold, it'll finish him off faster than what he's already got. But just waiting here for him to die, how is that an option? We're not just waiting for him to die. We're waiting for a helicopter. That's been grounded for a week. Voices get louder. The stress that's been simmering for days finally bursts out. No one's yelling at Gorelik. They're yelling at the situation, at their own helplessness, at how out of control it all feels. Kozlov holds up a hand, demanding quiet. Enough, he says. We're professionals. We don't panic. He looks everyone in the eye, one by one. We've got two options. First, we can try carrying him down ourselves. Bashkirov says that's a death sentence. I trust him. Or, we keep waiting for the helicopter and do everything we can to keep him alive up here. The team goes quiet. Everyone knows both choices are bad, but that second one, even if it's by a thread, still leaves the smallest chance. It's almost nothing. But it's not nothing. Kozlov gets back on the radio with the coordination center. This time, he's not asking, he's demanding. We need a helicopter, now, whatever it takes. If the army pilots can't do it, find a private pilot. If the private guys are nervous, just offer them more. But we need a flight. The coordinator answers, careful, cautious. We understand the situation. We're doing everything we can. Everything you can is not enough. He's dying. The weather, screw the weather, find someone who'll fly. There's a pause on the other end. There's one pilot, veteran guy, 20 years flying in these mountains. He says he can try tomorrow morning if there's a weather window. Kozlov grips the radio so tight his knuckles go white. Tell him if he pulls this off, we'll pay him whatever he wants. I'll pass that on. There was one faint shot left. Morning number 7. The team is up before sunrise, crawling out of their tents and scanning the sky. Clouds are scattered, torn. Here and there are patches of blue. The wind has dropped, maybe 13 miles an hour. Visibility's good. You can actually make out the summit of K2. This is the window, a small one, but enough. Kozlov grabs the radio. Weather's better. The helicopter can fly. Copy that. Pilot's already at the base, getting ready to take off. For the first time in a week, real hope spreads through base camp. Not the fleeting fake kind, something solid. The team scrambles to prep the landing area, clear off the snow, set out markers. They lay bright jackets along the edge of the landing zone, just so the pilot can spot it from a distance. Bashkirov gets Gorelik ready, double-checks the IV and the oxygen tank, and zips him into a sleeping bag. Everything has to be prepped by the time that helicopter touches down. Every minute counts. Half an hour goes by, then an hour, still no chopper. Kozlov grabs the radio again. Where's our bird? This window won't last long. Silence. Then the coordinator's voice crackles through, tense. The pilot took off about 20 minutes ago, but near the mountains, weather's turning bad again. Clouds are thickening, visibility's dropping. Is there any chance he can make it through? More silence, this time even longer. Pilot says it's just too risky. He's heading back to base. Those words hit like stones. The team's just standing there, surrounded by bright markers and freshly shoveled snow. Everything's set, the patient's prepped, but there's no helicopter. One of the climbers says quietly, "He was so close." Kozlov lowers the radio, looks up at the sky. The clouds are closing back in, and those narrow strips of blue just vanish. The wind picks up. That short window is gone. Bashkirov stands by the medical tent, not moving, just staring into nothing. He's a doctor. He knows what comes next. Gorelik has made it 7 days. 7 days, hanging on between life and death. His body's out of reserves. His heart is barely holding on. His lungs are so full of fluid that gas exchange has almost stopped. The body's fighting, but this battle's already lost. Bashkirov heads inside the tent, checks the pulse, weak, thready, all over the place. He checks the breathing, shallow, with long pauses in between. That's called Cheney-Stokes breathing. It means the brain's losing control over breathing. It's the last stage. The doctor sits down next to Gorelik, takes his hand, the one that isn't frostbitten. It's cold, almost icy. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "I did everything I could." Gorelik doesn't answer. He can't hear him anymore. He's already somewhere far away beyond consciousness. Bashkirov just sits there, holds on to his hand, waits. At that point, it was clear. There's not going to be a miracle. Evening of the 7th day. The medical tent is quiet. Outside, there's only the wind and the faint hiss of the oxygen tank. Bashkirov still sits beside Gorelik, holding his hand, watching his face. It's pale, waxy, almost see-through. His breathing gets slower and slower. A breath, silence, another breath. The pause is longer. This is the end. Bashkirov knows it. He's seen it dozens of times. The body shuts down step by step. First, the extremities go cold. Then the kidneys stop. Then the liver gives up. The very last thing to stop is the heart. Gorelik takes a breath. It's slow, labored. His chest barely rises. Then an exhale. Pause. Bashkirov watches his watch, counts the seconds. 10, 20, 30. Another breath, barely more than a sigh. Exhale, pause. Bashkirov leans in, listening, checks for a pulse on the neck, barely there. The heart thuds just a couple more times. Gorelik isn't breathing anymore. The doctor waits another minute, 2. Checks the pulse again. Nothing. He takes off the oxygen mask, closes Gorelik's eyes, pulls the blanket up to his chin. Then he steps out of the tent. The rest of the team is sitting around the fire. No one says a word. They just stare into the fire. When Bashkirov shows up, nobody asks any questions. You can see it all on his face. Kozlov stands up, walks over to the doctor, and puts a hand on his shoulder. "You did everything you could." Bashkirov shakes his head. It wasn't enough. Nobody here could have done more. The doctor doesn't answer. He just stands there, watching the flames. One of the climbers asks quietly, "When?" "About 10 minutes ago." Silence falls over the group. Everyone goes off into their own thoughts. They remember what it was like on the slope with Gorelik, the way he set the ropes, how he worked, silent, reliable, always precise. They think about how just 1 minute without a glove changed everything. Kozlov grabs the satellite phone. He has to call home. He has to tell the family, his wife, his kids. It's the hardest call he's ever had to make. He walks away from the fire, punches in the number, and listens to the endless ringing. Night settles over base camp. The temperature drops to 30 below. The stars above are bright, cold, and distant. K2 looms over the camp, a huge black shape against the starry sky. Silent, still, uncaring. The mountain isn't out to kill anyone. It just is. People come here because they choose to. Sometimes they don't come back. Gorelik came to K2 chasing the summit. He never made it. He died here, in base camp, a place he thought was safe. Frostbite set off a chain of events that couldn't be stopped. Pulmonary edema, the storm, no way out. 7 days of agony. And then, he was gone. But it didn't end with his last breath. On the morning of day 8, the team gathers near the medic tent. They have to decide what to do with Gorelik's body. Carry him down? That's 2 to 3 days across the glacier. Hauling a body in these conditions puts everyone at risk. Crevasses, avalanches, frostbite. And what for? Bringing the body home won't bring him back. Airlift out? The weather's better, but the command center says, priorities for the living. The dead can wait. Or they're just left here. Kozlov looks at the others and says quietly, "We'll bury him here." Nobody disagrees. On K2, that's how it goes. The mountain becomes the final resting place for many climbers. Their bodies stay on the slopes, sometimes marking the way for those who come after. They find a spot near base camp, a small ledge between the rocks, sheltered from the wind. They dig into the frozen ground. It's tough, back-breaking work at this altitude. Every swing of the shovel burns in their lungs. They wrap Gorelik in his sleeping bag, carry him to the spot, lower him into the ground, cover him with rocks to keep him safe from snow and animals. The team gathers around. Kozlov says a few words about how Gorelik was always dependable, how he loved the mountains, and how now he'll stay here forever, at the foot of the summit he came to conquer. Bashkirov stands silent. He's a doctor, used to fighting for life. This time, he lost. One of the climbers sets up a wooden cross. There's his name, the dates, and a short line. Climb to the end. The team says their goodbyes. Each person steps forward, some in silence, others whispering something only the mountain will hear. Some people just stand there for a few minutes staring at the rocks. Then they head back to camp. The expedition goes on, but the mood is different now. The team sets up the last camps, starts mapping out a route to the summit. But nobody can stop thinking about Gorelik, about how quickly things can change. 1 minute without a glove, 7 days of agony. One life gone in a place that was supposed to be safe. A month later, the expedition wraps up. The team heads home to Russia without Gorelik. His story turns into a lesson. In climbing circles, everyone talks about it as a reminder of how dangerous the mountains really are. Not just during the final push, not just in the so-called death zone, but everywhere. Frostbite at high altitude isn't just an injury, it's a trigger for disaster. When your body's weakened by trauma, it just can't handle the stress anymore. Then the complications set in. And on K2, during winter, complications almost always mean death. The mountain doesn't kill you, it just shows you where the limit is. Gorelik was no rookie. He knew the rules. He knew you never take off your gloves. But he did, because the rope was stuck. Because he figured 1 minute was no big deal. But that 1 minute was all it took. His grave is still there at the base of K2. The wooden cross is faded from sun and wind. The stones are partly covered by snow. But the spot remains. And so does the question that no one can ever answer. What if the helicopter had flown?